My name is Marcus, and I'm standing outside St. Mary's Catholic Church in downtown Portland, Oregon, watching people I barely recognize file in for my grandfather's funeral. The October rain is coming down in that persistent Pacific Northwest way that soaks through your jacket no matter how waterproof it claims to be. I pull my collar up higher and check my phone. 2:47 p.m. The service started 17 minutes ago. I should have been inside already, but honestly, I wasn't sure I'd even show up until I found myself parking across the street 20 minutes ago. The last time I saw most of these people was at my high school graduation 12 years ago, and even then, half of them acted like I was some kind of unwelcome guest at my own family gathering. Through the stained glass windows, I can see the warm glow of the church lights, and I catch glimpses of people in their black suits and dresses. My cousin Derek is probably giving the eulogy right about now. Derek, who visited Grandpa Joe exactly twice in the last 5 years, both times when he needed money for his failing construction business. I take a deep breath and push through the heavy wooden doors. The familiar smell of incense and old wood hits me immediately, bringing back memories of Christmas Eve services when I was a kid. Grandpa Joe always insisted we sit in the third pew from the front, left side. Close enough to hear the word of God, far enough to make a quick exit if the sermon runs long, he used to whisper to me with that mischievous grin of his. Every head turns as I slip into the back row. I can practically feel the whispers starting. There's my Aunt Patricia, Grandpa's eldest daughter, giving me a look that could freeze the Columbia River. Next to her sits my Uncle Frank, who's been trying to get his hands on Grandpa's property for the better part of a decade. And there, at the front, is Derek finishing up his speech about what a devoted family man our grandfather was. The irony isn't lost on me. These people spent the last few years treating Grandpa Joe like he was an inconvenience, a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved. Meanwhile, I was the one driving across town every Sunday to have coffee with him, listening to his stories about working at the shipyard during the 70s, helping him fix that old Buick that probably should have been junked 15 years ago. Joseph Michael Sullivan was a pillar of this community, Derek continues, his voice carrying that practiced tone of someone who's more concerned with how he sounds than what he's saying. He taught us the value of hard work, the importance of family, and the meaning of integrity. I almost laugh out loud. Integrity. This from the same people who spent the last 6 months trying to convince Grandpa Joe that he was too old to live alone, that he needed to sign over his power of attorney, that he should sell the house and move into some sterile assisted living facility so they could get their hands on his assets. The service drags on for another 40 minutes. There are hymns I remember from childhood, readings from scripture that Grandpa Joe actually believed in, and more speeches from relatives who suddenly discovered what a wonderful man he was now that he's gone. I find myself staring at the simple wooden casket at the front of the church, remembering the last real conversation I had with him just 3 weeks ago. He'd been more tired than usual that Sunday, moving slower around his cluttered kitchen while he made our coffee. The house on Maple Street had been his home for 53 years, and it showed. Every surface was covered with the accumulated treasures of a long life. Old newspapers, family photos, coffee mugs from places he'd visited, books he'd read so many times the spines were cracked and faded. "Marcus," he'd said, settling into his favorite chair, the brown leather recliner that had been his spot for as long as I could remember. "I need you to know something. These people coming around here, your aunt and uncle, Derek, they think they know what's best for me, but I've been taking care of myself since before they were born, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let them push me around now." I'd nodded, not really understanding what he was getting at. Grandpa Joe had always been independent, sometimes stubbornly so. The idea of him needing anyone to take care of him seemed impossible. "They keep talking about my will," he'd continued, his weathered hands wrapped around his coffee mug, "about what I'm leaving and to who. But here's the thing, son. Sometimes the most important things can't be written down in legal documents. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to find them." At the time, I'd thought he was just being philosophical. Grandpa Joe had a way of speaking in riddles when he was in one of his reflective moods. But now, sitting in this church listening to people who barely knew him talk about his legacy, I'm starting to wonder if there was more to his words than I realized. The service finally ends, and I watch as people file out toward the cemetery. I should go to the burial, pay my final respects properly. But as I stand up to leave, Aunt Patricia appears at my elbow like a vulture swooping in on roadkill. "Marcus," she says, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I'm so glad you could make it. I know how difficult things have been between you and the family." There it is, the subtle reminder that I'm the odd one out, the one who never quite fit in with their idea of what a Sullivan should be, the one who chose to be a freelance graphic designer instead of going into Frank's construction business, the one who dated a guy named David for 3 years and had to endure their uncomfortable silences at family gatherings, the one who actually cared about Grandpa Joe as a person instead of as a source of inheritance. "I wouldn't have missed it," I reply, keeping my voice neutral. "He was my grandfather too." Patricia's smile tightens just a fraction. "Of course he was. We're all going to miss him terribly." She pauses, and I can see her calculating her next words. "I suppose you'll be wanting to know about the will reading. It's scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. at Morrison & Associates downtown. Though I should warn you, Marcus, Dad was very specific about his wishes. He wanted to make sure the family assets went to people who could properly maintain them. The message is clear. Don't get your hopes up. I'm not the kind of person they think deserves to inherit anything meaningful. I'm just the grandson who showed up to Sunday coffee and actually listened to the old man's stories. I'll be there," I say simply. As I walk out of the church, I can feel their eyes on my back. The rain has stopped, but the sky is still gray and heavy with clouds. I stand on the steps for a moment, watching the procession of black cars heading toward the cemetery. I should follow them, but something is pulling me in a different direction. Instead of going to the burial, I find myself driving through the familiar streets of southeast Portland, past the coffee shops and vintage stores, past the food trucks and the murals painted on the sides of buildings. I'm not really thinking about where I'm going until I turn onto Maple Street and see the house. Grandpa Joe's house looks smaller somehow, sitting there empty with its windows dark and the front porch scattered with fallen leaves. The red brick is the same, the white trim around the windows just as neat as always. He'd painted it himself just last spring, despite Frank's protests that he should hire someone. The old oak tree in the front yard is dropping its leaves in golden drifts across the lawn. I sit in my car for a long time, just looking at the place. This house holds more memories for me than anywhere else in the world. Summer afternoons spent helping him in the garden, learning to change the oil in that old Buick, sitting on the front porch while he told me stories about growing up during the Great Depression. This is where I learned that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of, where I first felt like someone understood me for who I really was. The key is still under the third flower pot on the left side of the porch, just like it's been for the past 20 years. Grandpa Joe never worried much about security. Anyone who wants to break into an old man's house probably needs what's inside more than I do, he used to say. I let myself in, and the familiar smell of old wood and coffee hits me immediately. Everything looks exactly the same as it did 3 weeks ago, down to the stack of newspapers on the kitchen table and the coffee mug still sitting in the sink. It's like he just stepped out and might come back any minute. I walk through the living room, past the pictures on the mantel, Grandpa Joe in his Navy uniform, my grandmother Mary before she passed away when I was 10, family photos from holidays and birthdays spanning decades. There's even a picture of me from my college graduation, grinning in my cap and gown while he stands beside me looking prouder than I'd ever seen him. The house feels different now though, not just empty, but somehow expectant, like it's waiting for something. I find myself thinking about what he said that last Sunday. About important things hiding in plain sight, about things that can't be written down in legal documents. I'm still puzzling over his words when I notice something I'd never paid attention to before. The living room bookshelf, which had always been crammed with novels and biographies and technical manuals from his shipyard days, has been organized. Not just organized, completely reorganized. The books are arranged by height now, creating a neat ascending pattern that's completely unlike the chaotic but comfortable arrangement that had been there for years. It's such a small thing, but it bothers me. Grandpa Joe wasn't the kind of person who reorganized his books. He was the kind of person who left them exactly where he'd last set them down, creating little archaeological layers of his reading habits over the years. I run my finger along the spines, and that's when I notice it, a small gap between two books, just wide enough for a piece of paper. I pull the books apart and find a folded note with my name written on it in Grandpa Joe's careful handwriting. My heart starts beating faster as I unfold the paper. It's a short message, just a few lines. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then you're the one who's supposed to find it. Look where we used to hide the Christmas presents. The answers are in the places that mattered most to us. Remember what I taught you about looking beneath the surface. Love, Grandpa Joe." I stare at the note for a long time, reading it over and over. The Christmas presents. I remember now. When I was a kid, Grandpa Joe used to hide our presents in the most unexpected places. Not under the tree or in a closet like normal people, but in the old trunk in the basement, behind the water heater, once even in the oven, much to Grandma Mary's horror when she tried to make dinner. But what answers is he talking about? And what did he mean about looking beneath the surface? I fold the note carefully and put it in my pocket. Whatever Grandpa Joe was trying to tell me, it's clear that this is just the beginning. The funeral was just the prologue to something much bigger, something that starts with a reorganized bookshelf and a cryptic note. As I lock up the house and walk back to my car, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. I turn around and see a dark sedan parked across the street, someone sitting in the driver's seat. It's too far away to make out who it is, but something about the way they're just sitting there, watching the house, makes me uneasy. I get in my car and drive away, but I can't stop thinking about that note. Whatever Grandpa Joe was trying to tell me, whatever he meant about things hiding in plain sight, I have a feeling it's going to change everything. And judging by the way my family acted at the funeral, I'm not the only one who thinks he might have left behind more than they're letting on. The will reading is in 3 days. But I have a feeling that the real inheritance, the one that actually matters, is going to be found long before then. Thursday morning arrives grey and drizzly, typical October weather in Portland. I'm sitting in the reception area of Morrison & Associates, a law firm housed in one of those historic buildings downtown that's been converted into office space. The lobby tries to look prestigious with its dark wood paneling and leather chairs, but the fluorescent lighting and worn carpet give away its true budget-conscious nature. I got here 20 minutes early, partly because I couldn't sleep last night, and partly because I wanted to observe my family's dynamics without them having time to prepare their usual performance. The note I found in Grandpa Joe's bookshelf has been burning a hole in my pocket for the past 3 days, and I've been fighting the urge to go back to the house and start searching for whatever he wanted me to find. At 9:55 a.m., they arrive all at once, like a coordinated invasion. Aunt Patricia sweeps in first, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my rent, followed by Uncle Frank in a suit that's trying too hard to look expensive. Derek trails behind them, checking his phone and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Marcus," Patricia says, her voice carrying that same artificial sweetness from the funeral. "I'm surprised you're here so early." "I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything important," I reply, standing up to shake Frank's hand. His grip is firm, the kind of handshake that's supposed to establish dominance. I've never understood why some people think squeezing someone's hand until it hurts is a sign of strength. "Well," Frank says, settling into one of the leather chairs, "I think we all know this is just a formality. Dad was always clear about his intentions regarding the family assets." Derek looks up from his phone, long enough to nod in agreement. Grandpa Joe was a practical man. He understood the importance of keeping things in the family, with people who know how to handle real estate and investments. I'm about to respond when a woman in her 50s emerges from the inner office. She's wearing a navy blue suit and carrying a thick folder, her grey hair pulled back in a professional bun. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Morrison, Mr. Sullivan's attorney. I'm sorry for your loss. Joseph was one of my favorite clients over the years. We follow her into a conference room with a large oak table and windows overlooking the Willamette River. The view is actually pretty nice, with the bridges spanning the water and the West Hills rising in the distance. Ms. Morrison takes her seat at the head of the table and opens her folder. Before we begin, she says, I want to explain that Mr. Sullivan's will is somewhat unconventional. He came to me about 6 months ago with very specific instructions about how he wanted his estate handled. Patricia and Frank exchange glances. I can see the wheels turning in their heads. They're probably wondering if Grandpa Joe changed something at the last minute, maybe gave more to the church or some charity. The will itself is straightforward, Ms. Morrison continues, pulling out a document. Mr. Sullivan left his savings account, which contains approximately $47,000, to be divided equally among his 3 children, Patricia, Frank, and Michael Jr. I do the math quickly. My father, Michael Jr., died in a car accident when I was 15. That means his share would presumably come to me, giving me about $15,000. His personal belongings, furniture, clothing, books, and other household items, are to be distributed among family members as they see fit, with the exception of certain items specifically mentioned. Frank leans forward. What about the house? The property on Maple Street? Ms. Morrison's expression becomes carefully neutral. That's where things get interesting. Mr. Sullivan left very specific instructions regarding the house. He wanted it to go to someone who would truly appreciate its value, not just its monetary worth, but its significance as a family home. Of course, Patricia says quickly. Frank and I have been discussing how to maintain the property, possibly renovate it for modern living while preserving its historic character. I'm sure you have, Ms. Morrison replies dryly. However, Mr. Sullivan's instructions were quite explicit. He wanted the house to go to the family member who showed the most consistent care and attention to him during his final years. The room goes quiet. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, but I'm staring at Ms. Morrison, trying to process what she's saying. Furthermore, she continues, he specifically stated that the house should go to Marcus Sullivan, with the condition that he can only claim ownership if he can prove he understood what Mr. Sullivan considered to be the property's true value. What the hell does that mean? Frank explodes, his practiced composure finally cracking. What kind of condition is that? You can't just leave property to someone with riddles attached. Ms. Morrison doesn't flinch. Actually, Mr. Frank, you can. It's called a conditional bequest, and it's perfectly legal. Mr. Sullivan was very clear about his wishes. Patricia's face has gone pale. This is ridiculous. Marcus hasn't shown any interest in maintaining property. He's a graphic designer who lives in a studio apartment. What does he know about home ownership? I'm sitting right here, I say quietly, but my voice carries more authority than I expected. And I spent every Sunday for the past 5 years having coffee with him while you were all too busy to visit. That's not the same as being responsible for a property worth over $400,000, Derek interjects. The house needs work, ongoing maintenance, property taxes, which brings us to the next part of Mr. Sullivan's instructions, Ms. Morrison interrupts. He established a trust fund specifically for the maintenance and upkeep of the house. The fund contains $150,000, which will be managed by this firm and made available to whoever inherits the property. The room falls silent again. I can practically hear the gears grinding in everyone's heads as they recalculate their assumptions about Grandpa Joe's estate. But, Ms. Morrison continues, there's one more condition. Marcus has 30 days to prove he understands what Mr. Sullivan considered to be the true value of the property. If he can't do that, the house and the maintenance fund will be sold, and the proceeds will be divided equally among all family members. What kind of proof? I ask, finding my voice. Ms. Morrison reaches into her folder and pulls out a sealed envelope. Mr. Sullivan left this for you. He said it would help you understand what he's looking for. I take the envelope with shaking hands. My name is written on the front in Grandpa Joe's careful handwriting, just like the note I found in the bookshelf. Can I open it now? I ask. Of course. In fact, Mr. Sullivan specifically requested that you open it in front of the family. I tear open the envelope and pull out a single sheet of paper. It's another note, longer this time. Marcus, if you're hearing this, then you're sitting in Sarah Morrison's office with the rest of the family, and they're probably not too happy about my decision. I want you to know that I didn't make this choice lightly. Over the past few years, I've watched how each of my children and grandchildren treated me, and more importantly, how they treated the things that mattered to me. You're the only one who ever really listened to my stories, who cared about the history of our family and our home. You're the only one who saw the house as more than just a piece of real estate to be bought and sold. The true value of the house isn't in its market price or its potential for renovation. It's in the memories it holds, the stories it could tell, and the love that's been shared within its walls. But there's more to it than that, and I think you're the only one who can understand what I mean. Remember what I told you about looking beneath the surface. Remember the places that mattered most to us. The answers you need are all there, waiting for someone who cares enough to look. You have 30 days to prove you understand. I believe in you, son. I always have. Love, Grandpa Joe P.S. Don't let them pressure you into giving up. Some things are worth fighting for. I look up to find everyone staring at me. Patricia's face is tight with anger. Frank looks like he's about to explode. And Derek is frantically typing on his phone, probably texting someone about this unexpected turn of events. This is insane, Patricia says, her voice shaking. He's playing games with us from beyond the grave. What's to stop Marcus from just claiming he understands and taking the house? Because he has to prove it, Ms. Morrison explains patiently. Mr. Sullivan left additional instructions with me about what constitutes acceptable proof. I can't share those details, but I can tell you that simply claiming to understand won't be sufficient. Frank stands up abruptly. This is a waste of time. We'll contest the will. No judge is going to uphold this kind of nonsense. You're certainly free to try, Ms. Morrison replies calmly. But I should warn you that Mr. Sullivan anticipated that possibility. He spent considerable time with me ensuring that his will is ironclad legally. He was quite determined that his wishes be followed exactly. I'm still staring at the note, reading it over and over. The phrase, looking beneath the surface, keeps jumping out at me. He used the same words in the first note I found, and again here. It has to be significant. Marcus, Patricia says, her voice taking on a pleading tone. Be reasonable. You know you can't afford to maintain a house like that. The property taxes alone would be more than your rent. Why don't we work something out? You could take your share of the money, and Frank and I could handle the property. Everyone wins. I look at her, really look at her, and for the first time I see past the designer clothes and the artificial concern. She's scared. They're all scared, not just of losing the inheritance they thought they had coming, but of something else, something about the house itself. I need some time to think, I say, folding the note carefully and putting it in my pocket with the first one. Of course you do, Ms. Morrison says. You have 30 days from today. If you need to reach me, you have my card. As we file out of the conference room, Derek catches up with me in the hallway. Marcus, seriously, think about this. Even if you figure out whatever game Grandpa Joe was playing, do you really want to deal with owning a house? The headaches, the responsibilities, the expenses? Maybe, I say. Or maybe there's something about that house that you don't understand. His expression shifts just for a moment, and I see something I wasn't expecting. Fear. Not the fear of losing money, but genuine, visceral fear. "What do you mean by that?" he asks. "I don't know yet," I admit, "but I'm going to find out." As I walk to my car, I can feel them watching me. But instead of feeling intimidated, I feel energized for the first time in months. Grandpa Joe believed in me enough to leave me his most precious possession, and he trusted me to understand something that apparently no one else in the family does. I drive straight to Maple Street. The house looks the same as it did a few days ago, but now I'm seeing it with different eyes. This isn't just a piece of property worth $400,000. This is a puzzle that Grandpa Joe spent months, maybe years, preparing for me to solve. I let myself in with the key from under the flower pot and stand in the living room, looking around with new purpose. The note mentioned looking beneath the surface and the places that mattered most to us. I think about all the Sunday afternoons I spent here, all the conversations we had, all the stories he told me about the history of the house and our family. That's when I remember something he told me once about the house's original owner, a man who supposedly hid something valuable during the Great Depression. At the time, I thought he was just telling me a story, but now I'm wondering if there was more truth to it than I realized. I walk over to the bookshelf where I found the first note. The books are still arranged by height, creating that neat ascending pattern that had seemed so out of character for Grandpa Joe. But now I'm looking at it differently. It's not just organized, it's deliberate, like a code or a message. I pull out my phone and take a picture of the bookshelf, then start examining the titles more carefully. Most of them are novels and biographies, but there are also several books about local history, including one about the architecture of Portland homes built in the 1920s. I pull out the architecture book and flip through it, looking for any marks or notes that Grandpa Joe might have left. On page 127, I find it, a small pencil mark next to a paragraph about hidden compartments in Depression-era homes. Many homeowners during the 1930s created secret storage spaces, the text reads, often behind false walls or beneath floorboards to protect valuable items from bank failures and home foreclosures. These compartments were typically located in areas where families spent the most time, such as living rooms or kitchens. I look up from the book and survey the living room again. The places that mattered most to us. This is where Grandpa Joe and I spent most of our Sunday afternoons, sitting in his recliner and on the old sofa, talking about everything and nothing while the coffee got cold. I'm about to start examining the walls when I hear a car door slam outside. Through the front window, I see the same dark sedan that was parked across the street after the funeral. This time, I can see the driver clearly. It's Derek, and he's walking toward the front door. I quickly put the architecture book back on the shelf and go to answer the door before he starts knocking. "Derek," I say, opening the door. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk to you," he says, looking past me into the house. "About this whole situation with the will. Can I come in?" "I guess," I say, stepping aside, but I don't like the way he's looking around the living room like he's searching for something. "Look, Marcus," he says, settling into Grandpa Joe's recliner without being invited. "I know my mom and uncle were pretty harsh at the lawyer's office, but they're just worried about you. We all are. Worried about me, how? This house, it's a lot of responsibility. And to be honest, there are some things about it that you don't know, things that might make you reconsider wanting to inherit it." I sit down on the sofa and study his face. "What kind of things?" Derek shifts uncomfortably. "Well, for one thing, the foundation has some issues. Frank looked at it a few months ago, and he thinks it's going to need major work. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Grandpa Joe set up a maintenance fund," I remind him. "That might not be enough," Derek says quickly. "And there are other problems too. The electrical system is old. The plumbing needs updating. The roof will need to be replaced in a few years." He's trying to scare me away, but I can tell there's something he's not saying, something about the way he keeps glancing around the room, like he's looking for something specific. "Derek," I say slowly, "what are you really here for?" His composure cracks just a little. "I'm here because I care about you, Marcus, and because I think Grandpa Joe might have been confused in his final months." Some of the things he said to me before he died didn't make a lot of sense. What kind of things? He kept talking about the house having secrets, about things being hidden in plain sight. Honestly, I think he might have been developing dementia. Maybe that's why he made this ridiculous will with all these conditions and riddles. I think about the note in my pocket, about the reorganized bookshelf, about the pencil mark in the architecture book. None of that sounds like dementia to me. It sounds like someone who was very deliberately preparing for something. I think you should go, I say, standing up. Derek looks surprised. Marcus, I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to help yourself. You and your mum and Uncle Frank all thought you were going to inherit this house, and now you're panicking because it's not going the way you planned. That's not— Yes, it is, I interrupt. And whatever you're really looking for in this house, you're not going to find it while I'm here. Derek's face goes pale. I don't know what you mean. And I think you do, I say, walking toward the front door. I think you know exactly what Grandpa Joe was hiding, and you're terrified that I'm going to find it first. He follows me to the door, his hands shaking slightly. Marcus, you're making a mistake. Some secrets are better left buried. Maybe, I say, opening the door. But I guess I'll find out. After Derek leaves, I lock the door and lean against it, my heart pounding. Whatever Grandpa Joe hid in this house, whatever he meant about the true value of the property, it's bigger than I thought, big enough to make my family desperate, scared, and willing to lie to me about it. I walk back to the bookshelf and pull out the architecture book again. This time, I read the entire chapter about hidden compartments, looking for any other marks or clues. On the last page of the chapter, I find another pencil mark, this one next to a single word, foundation. I think about what Derek said about the foundation having problems, about Frank examining it a few months ago. What if that wasn't about structural issues? What if they were looking for something? I grab a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and head down to the basement. The concrete floor is old and cracked in places, but mostly solid. I walk around the perimeter, examining the walls and the floor, looking for any sign of disturbance or hidden compartments. That's when I notice something odd. In the corner near the old furnace, there's a section of the concrete floor that's a slightly different color than the rest. It's subtle, barely noticeable unless you're looking for it, but it's there. I kneel down and run my hands over the concrete. It feels different too, smoother, like it's been poured more recently than the rest of the floor. The section is about 3 feet by 3 feet, just big enough to hide something significant. I sit back on my heels and think about what I've learned. Grandpa Joe left me clues about looking beneath the surface, about the places that mattered most to us. The living room bookshelf pointed me to information about hidden compartments in Depression-era homes. The architecture book mentioned that these compartments were often located in areas where families spent the most time. But it also mentioned that some were hidden beneath floorboards, or in some cases, beneath basement floors. The foundation, the true value of the property. The answers hiding in plain sight. I have a feeling I'm about to discover what Grandpa Joe really left me, and why my family is so desperate to keep me from finding it. I'm back at the house at 7 a.m. the next morning, carrying a bag of tools I borrowed from my friend Jake, who does construction work. I told him I needed to do some minor repairs around my grandfather's house, which is technically true, even if the repairs involve breaking through concrete. I barely slept last night, thinking about that different colored section of the basement floor. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Derek's face when I accused him of looking for something in the house. The fear in his eyes wasn't about losing an inheritance. It was about losing something much more specific. The October morning is crisp and clear, with that sharp autumn air that makes everything feel more vivid. I let myself into the house and head straight to the basement, where I've already set up a work light to get a better look at the concrete floor. In the bright light, the difference in the concrete is even more obvious. The newer section is definitely smoother, and when I tap it with a hammer, it sounds slightly hollow compared to the solid thud of the older concrete around it. I start with a small chisel, working carefully around the edges of the newer section. The concrete is hard, but not as hard as I expected. It's like someone mixed it to be strong enough to look normal, but not so strong that it couldn't be removed if necessary. After about an hour of careful work, I've managed to chisel around the entire perimeter of the section. I can see now that it's not just a different color, it's actually a separate piece, like a concrete lid that's been fitted into place. I work the chisel under one edge and start to pry upward. The concrete slab is heavy, probably 60 or 70 pounds, but it moves. Slowly, carefully, I lift it up and set it aside. Underneath is a metal box about the size of a small suitcase. It's old, but well preserved, with a simple latch that opens easily. My hands are shaking as I lift the lid. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, are several items. The first thing I see is a leather journal, thick and well worn. Beneath that are several official-looking documents, and at the bottom of the box, something that makes my breath catch, stacks of gold coins, each one wrapped in tissue paper. I sit back on my heels, staring at the contents of the box. This is what Grandpa Joe was talking about when he mentioned things hiding in plain sight. This is what Derek and Frank and Patricia were looking for. I carefully lift out the journal and open it to the first page. It's written in my grandfather's handwriting, but the entries are dated from the 1970s, when he was a young man working at the shipyard. March 15th, 1974, the first entry reads, "Found something today at the Sullivan house that changes everything. The old man wasn't crazy after all. He really did hide something during the Depression, and now I know where it is." Ew. I flipped through several pages, reading about how Grandpa Joe had been doing repair work on the house, his house now, the one I'm sitting in, and had discovered evidence of hidden compartments. The original owner, a man named Thomas Sullivan, no relation despite the name, had been a successful businessman who lost everything in the stock market crash of 1929. March 22nd, 1974. Another entry reads, "Found the first compartment today, behind the false wall in the basement." Thomas Sullivan was smarter than anyone gave him credit for. He didn't just hide money, he hid gold coins, documents, things that would hold their value even if the banks failed completely. There's more too. Maps, locations of other hiding places. This house is like a treasure chest that's been waiting 45 years for someone to open it. I keep reading, my amazement growing with each entry. Grandpa Joe had spent months in 1974 carefully searching the house, following clues that Thomas Sullivan had left behind. He'd found not just gold coins, but also stock certificates, property deeds, and even some rare stamps and jewelry. April 10th, 1974, reads another entry. "Mary thinks I'm losing my mind, spending all my free time searching through walls and floors, but I can't stop now. Thomas Sullivan left a map, and I think I've only found about half of what he hid." The man was paranoid, but he was also brilliant. He created a system that would protect his wealth even if someone found one or two of the hiding places. I look up from the journal and survey the basement with new eyes. If Grandpa Joe found this much in 1974, and if there are other hiding places throughout the house, then the true value of the property is far beyond the $400,000 market price. I flip to the back of the journal, looking for more recent entries. The handwriting changes, becoming shakier. These entries are from just a few months ago. September 12th, 2024, I read. "Frank came by again today, asking about the foundation. Patricia was with him, and they kept looking around like they were casing the joint. I think they know about Thomas Sullivan's hiding places, or at least suspect something. Derek's been asking too many questions about the house's history. Time to make sure the right person gets what's been waiting all these years." September 18th, 2024, the next entry reads, "Talk to Marcus today about looking beneath the surface. He's the only one who would understand what this house really means. Not just the money, but the history, the story of a man who was smart enough to protect his family's future, even when the whole world was falling apart. Marcus is like Thomas Sullivan in some ways. He sees value where others see junk, beauty where others see problems. I feel a lump forming in my throat as I read the final entry, dated just 2 weeks before Grandpa Joe's death. October 3rd, 2024. It reads, "Finished reorganizing the bookshelf today. Left the clues where Marcus will find them. If something happens to me, I know he'll figure it out." The boy has always been different from the rest of the family, but different in the best way. He listens to stories, cares about history, understands that some things are worth more than their price tag. If anyone deserves to inherit Thomas Sullivan's legacy, it's him. I close the journal and wipe my eyes, which have gotten unaccountably misty. Then I turn my attention to the documents in the box. The first one is a deed to the house, dated 1929, with Thomas Sullivan's name on it. The second is a hand-drawn map of the house, with several locations marked with X's. I spread the map out on the basement floor and compare it to the layout of the house above me. There are X's in the living room, the kitchen, the master bedroom, and even one in the backyard. Next to each X is a small number, 1, 2, 3, and so on, up to 7. The basement location where I found this box is marked as number 4, which means there are at least 3 more hiding places I haven't found yet. I carefully examine the gold coins, which are mostly American eagles and Canadian maple leafs from the 1970s and 1980s. There are about 50 coins total, which at current gold prices would be worth around $120,000, but that's just from one hiding place. My phone buzzes with a text message. It's from Derek. "Hey, wanted to apologize for yesterday. Can we talk? I'm worried about you taking on this house project alone." I stare at the message for a long moment, then type back, "I'm fine. Thanks for the concern." He responds immediately. "Are you at the house now? I could come over and help you look around, maybe give you some advice about the repairs." I definitely don't want Derek here while I'm searching for the other hiding places. "Not today. I'll call you later." I put the phone away and turn back to the map. Location number 1 is marked in the living room, somewhere near the fireplace. Location number 2 is in the kitchen, close to where the old pantry used to be. Location number 3 is in the master bedroom, and locations number 5, number 6, and number 7 are scattered around the house. I carefully pack everything back into the metal box and carry it upstairs. I need to find a safe place to hide it while I search for the other locations. The last thing I want is for someone to break in and find what I've discovered. I end up hiding the box in the most obvious place I can think of, inside the old trunk in the guest bedroom, underneath some of Grandpa Joe's old clothes. Sometimes the best hiding place is the one that's so obvious no one thinks to look there. I start with location number 1, the living room near the fireplace. According to the map, there's something hidden behind the brick facade of the fireplace itself. I run my hands along the bricks, looking for any that might be loose or out of place. It takes me almost an hour to find it, but eventually I discover that one of the bricks, about 3 feet up from the floor, can be moved. It's not loose. It's designed to slide out, revealing a small compartment behind it. Inside the compartment is another cloth bundle, this one containing more gold coins and what looks like a collection of rare stamps. There's also a small notebook with more entries from Thomas Sullivan himself, written in the 1930s. "The banks have failed," one entry reads, "but gold will always have value. I've divided my remaining assets into 7 locations throughout the house. If something happens to me, I pray that whoever finds this will understand that I wasn't a hoarder or a miser. I was a man trying to protect his family's future in uncertain times. I'm starting to understand why Grandpa Joe was so determined that I inherit the house. This isn't just about money, it's about preserving a piece of history, a testament to one man's ingenuity and foresight during one of the most difficult periods in American history." I move on to location number 2, the kitchen pantry. This one is trickier to find, but eventually I discover that one of the floor tiles near the old pantry can be lifted, revealing another small compartment with more coins and some old jewelry. By the time I finish searching location number 3 in the master bedroom, I found what I estimate to be close to $300,000 worth of gold coins, rare stamps, and antique jewelry. and I still have 4 more locations to search. I'm sitting in the living room, taking a break and trying to process what I've discovered when I hear a car door slam outside. Through the window, I see not just Derek this time, but also Uncle Frank and Aunt Patricia. They're all walking toward the front door with determined expressions. I quickly gather up the items I found and carry them upstairs to the guest bedroom, adding them to the trunk with the first box. Then I go downstairs and answer the door before they start knocking. "Marcus," Patricia says, pushing past me into the house, "we need to talk." "Actually, we need to make you an offer," Frank adds, following her inside. Derek comes in last, looking uncomfortable. "What kind of offer?" I ask, closing the door. "We've been thinking about this situation with the will," Patricia says, settling into Grandpa Joe's recliner like she owns the place. "And we realized that we might have been a little harsh yesterday. You loved Dad, and he loved you. We all know that. But," Frank continues, "we also know that inheriting this house is going to be a huge burden for you, so we want to make you a proposition." I sit down on the sofa and wait for them to continue. "We'll give you $100,000 cash," Patricia says, "right now, today. In exchange, you sign over any claim to the house and we'll handle the estate from here." "That's more than your share of the inheritance would have been under the original will," Derek adds. "And you won't have to deal with any of the headaches of home ownership." I look at the 3 of them, and I can see the desperation in their eyes. They're not just worried about losing an inheritance. They're worried about losing something specific, something they know is hidden in this house. "How do you know about Thomas Sullivan's hiding places?" I ask quietly. The change in their expressions is immediate and dramatic. Patricia goes pale, Frank's jaw tightens, and Derek actually takes a step backward. "What are you talking about?" Patricia asks, but her voice is shaky. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I say, standing up. "You've been searching this house for months, haven't you? Looking for the gold coins, the documents, all the things that Thomas Sullivan hid during the Depression." "Marcus," Frank says, trying to sound calm, "I think you've been reading too many of Dad's old stories. He always did have an active imagination." "Did he?" I walk over to the bookshelf and pull out the architecture book. "Or did he know exactly what this house was really worth?" I open the book to the page about hidden compartments and show them the pencil mark. "Grandpa Joe left me a trail of clues. He wanted me to find what Thomas Sullivan hid, and he wanted to make sure you didn't get it." The 3 of them exchange glances, and I can see them having an entire conversation with their eyes. Finally, Frank speaks. "All right," he says, "maybe we know a little bit about the house's history. Dad mentioned some stories about the original owner hiding things during the Depression, but that doesn't mean there's actually anything valuable still hidden here. Except you've been looking for it," I point out. "Derek, you were here yesterday checking out the living room. Frank, you examined the foundation months ago. Patricia, you've been pushing Grandpa Joe to sell the house for years. You weren't worried about his welfare. You were worried about losing access to whatever's hidden here." Patricia stands up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We're offering you $100,000 for a house that's going to cost you a fortune to maintain. You should be thanking us. I should be thanking you for trying to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine." "What's rightfully yours?" Frank explodes. "You think you deserve to inherit everything just because you had coffee with the old man every Sunday? We're his children. We took care of him for years." "No," I say, my voice getting louder. "You ignored him for years. And then when you realized he might have something valuable, you started circling like vultures. But he was smarter than you thought. He knew exactly what you were doing, and he made sure you wouldn't get what you were looking for." Derek steps forward. "Marcus, you don't understand. This house, there are things about it that you don't know, things that might be dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "There are people who know about Thomas Sullivan's hiding places," he says. "People who have been looking for them for decades. If word gets out that you found something—" "What people?" I ask. But even as I say it, I'm remembering the dark sedan that's been parked across the street, the feeling of being watched. "Just be careful," Derek says, "and think about our offer. $100,000 is a lot of money, and it comes with no strings attached, no dangers, no complications. After they leave, I lock the door and lean against it, my mind racing. They know about the hiding places, but they don't know I've already found several of them. They're scared, not just of losing money, but of something else, something Derek called dangerous. I think about what he said about people who have been looking for Thomas Sullivan's treasure for decades. If that's true, then I'm not just dealing with greedy relatives, I'm dealing with something much more serious. I go upstairs and check on the trunk in the guest bedroom. Everything is still there, but I realize I need to be more careful. I need to finish searching the house quickly before someone else figures out what I've found. I go back downstairs with Thomas Sullivan's map and start looking for location number 5, which is marked somewhere in the kitchen. This one takes me 2 hours to find, but eventually I discover that the old cast iron stove can be moved, revealing a small compartment in the wall behind it. Inside is another bundle, this one containing what looks like stock certificates and some old photographs. One of the photographs shows a man in a suit standing in front of the house, with Thomas Sullivan, 1928, written on the back. As I'm examining the photographs, I hear something that makes my blood run cold. The sound of someone trying to turn the doorknob of the front door. I freeze, listening. The sound comes again, followed by what sounds like someone walking around the perimeter of the house. I creep to the front window and peer out through the curtains. The dark sedan is parked across the street again, but this time there are 2 people inside. As I watch, I see someone walking around the side of the house, someone I don't recognize, wearing dark clothes and moving like they're trying not to be seen. I grab my phone and call 911, but as I'm dialing, I hear the sound of breaking glass from the back of the house. Someone is breaking in through the kitchen window. I run upstairs as quietly as I can, grabbing the items from the trunk and stuffing them into a backpack. I can hear someone moving around downstairs, searching through the rooms. They're not being particularly quiet about it. They're opening drawers, moving furniture, clearly looking for something specific. I slip into the master bedroom and close the door as quietly as possible. There's a fire escape outside the bedroom window, installed years ago when Grandpa Joe was worried about having only one way out of the upstairs. I open the window and climb out onto the fire escape, carrying the backpack with all of Thomas Sullivan's hidden treasures. As I'm climbing down the fire escape, I can see through the kitchen window. There are 2 people inside the house, both wearing dark clothes and ski masks. They're systematically searching the kitchen, and they clearly know what they're looking for. I reach the ground and run to my car, parked 2 blocks away. My hands are shaking as I start the engine and drive away from the house. In my rearview mirror, I can see the dark sedan following me. I drive randomly through the city for 20 minutes, taking turns at random, doubling back on myself until I'm sure I've lost whoever was following me. Then I park in a busy shopping center and call the police to report the break-in. While I wait for the police to arrive, I sit in my car and think about what just happened. Derek was right. There are people who know about Thomas Sullivan's hiding places, and they're willing to break into the house to find them. But how do they know? And what do they want with 80-year-old hidden treasure? I look at the backpack on the seat next to me, filled with gold coins, rare stamps, stock certificates, and jewelry. I found 5 of the 7 hiding places marked on Thomas Sullivan's map, and I estimate the total value at close to $500,000. But that's not the real treasure. The real treasure is the story, the history, the testament to one man's determination to protect his family's future. That's what Grandpa Joe understood, and that's what he wanted to preserve. But first, I need to figure out who else knows about the hiding places and what they're willing to do to get them. The police interview takes 3 hours. I tell them about the break-in, about the strangers in ski masks, about feeling like I've been watched since my grandfather's funeral. I don't mention the hidden treasure or the map or the fact that I'm sitting in my car with a backpack full of gold coins. Detective Lisa Chen seems competent and thorough, but I can tell she thinks this is probably just a random burglary. Sometimes people target houses right after funerals, she explains. They figure the family is distracted, the house might be empty, there might be valuable items lying around. Did they take anything? I ask. Hard to say without you going through the house, but it doesn't look like they were interested in the usual stuff. TV, computer, jewelry box. They really tore up the kitchen and the living room like they were looking for something specific. After the police leave, I drive to a hotel downtown and check in under a false name, paying cash. I know I'm probably being paranoid, but everything that's happened in the past few days has made me question everything I thought I knew about my family and my grandfather's death. I spread Thomas Sullivan's map out on the hotel bed and examine it carefully. I've found 5 of the 7 hiding places, but locations Dr. 6 and Dr. 7 are still undiscovered. Location Dr. 6 is marked in the backyard near what looks like an old garden shed. Location Dr. 7 is marked in the attic. I also have all of Thomas Sullivan's notes and journals, which I haven't had time to read completely. I settle in for a long night of reading, hoping to understand not just what he hid, but why he hid it, and who else might know about it. The earliest journal entries are from 1929, right after the stock market crash. Thomas Sullivan had been a successful businessman, but he saw what was coming before most people did. October 30th, 1929, one entry reads, "The market is in complete collapse. Banks are failing every day. I've liquidated everything I can and converted it to gold and other hard assets. If the entire financial system collapses, paper money will be worthless, but gold will always have value." November 15th, 1929, another entry reads, "People are calling me paranoid, but I've seen what happens when economies fail. I grew up hearing stories about the panic of 1907, about people losing everything overnight. I won't let that happen to my family." Today, the entries continue through 1930 and 1931, documenting Thomas Sullivan's methodical conversion of his remaining assets into gold coins, rare stamps, jewelry, and other items that would hold their value even in a complete economic collapse. But more importantly, they document his creation of the hiding places throughout the house. December 12, 1931, reads one entry. "Finished the 7th and final hiding place today. I've created a system that will protect our family's assets even if someone discovers 1 or 2 of the locations. The map is the key. Without it, even someone who knows about the hiding places would never find them all." I flip through more pages, looking for any mention of who else might know about the hiding places. That's when I find an entry that makes my blood run cold. March 8th, 1932, it reads, "Someone has been asking questions about me around town. A man claiming to be a business associate, but I've never seen him before. He's been asking about my finances, about whether I might have hidden assets. I think someone suspects what I've done." The entries become more paranoid after that, documenting Thomas Sullivan's growing fear that someone was watching him, following him, trying to discover his secrets. The final entry is dated June 15th, 1932. "They broke into the house last night while we were visiting my sister in Salem. They didn't take anything obvious, but I can tell they were searching for something. They know about the hiding places, but they don't know where they are. I'm going to have to be more careful. I'm going to have to find a way to make sure the right people get the map if something happens to me." I stare at the page, realizing what this means. People have been looking for Thomas Sullivan's hidden treasure for over 90 years. His family never found it, so it passed to the next owners of the house, and then to the next, until finally my grandfather bought the house in 1971 and discovered the first hiding place by accident. But if people were still looking for it in 1932, and if they broke into the house once, then they or their descendants might still be looking for it today. I'm mulling this over when my phone rings. It's Derek. "Marcus," he says, and I can hear the panic in his voice. "I just heard about the break-in. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I say carefully. "How did you hear about it?" "Mom called me. She said the police contacted her because she's listed as next of kin for the house." "Marcus, you need to be careful. This is exactly what I was worried about." "What do you mean?" There's a long pause. "Can we meet somewhere? I need to tell you something, and I can't do it over the phone. I don't know, Derek. After what happened today, Marcus, please. I know you don't trust me right now, but I'm trying to help you. There are things about this situation that you don't understand, things that my mom and Frank don't want you to know. Something in his voice makes me reconsider. Where do you want to meet? Do you remember that 24-hour diner on Powell, the one where Grandpa Joe used to take us sometimes when we were kids? I'm there now. Please, Marcus. I'll explain everything. I think about it for a moment. The diner is public, well lit, and I know all the exits. If Derek is trying to set some kind of trap, at least I'll see it coming. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I say. The diner hasn't changed much since I was a kid. The same red vinyl booths, the same black and white checkered floor, the same smell of coffee and grease. Derek is sitting in a corner booth, looking exhausted and nervous. Thanks for coming, he says as I sit down across from him. I wasn't sure you would. Start talking, I say. Derek looks around the diner to make sure no one is listening, then leans forward. Marcus, my mom and Frank have been lying to you. They've known about Thomas Sullivan's hiding places for years. How long have they known? Since the early 1990s. Frank was doing some renovation work on the house, and he found one of the hiding places by accident. There were some gold coins and old documents inside. So why didn't they search for the rest of them? They tried, Derek says, but they couldn't find the map. They knew there had to be more hiding places, but without the map, they were just guessing. They found maybe 2 or 3 locations over the years, but never the main stash. And they never told Grandpa Joe? Derek shakes his head. They figured he didn't know about them. They thought they could search quietly, find everything, and then either sell the house or buy it from him for below market value. But he did know, I say. Yeah, he knew. He'd known since the 1970s when he first bought the house. He found the map, Marcus. He found it and he's been protecting it ever since. I think about the journal entries I found, about Grandpa Joe's months of searching in 1974. He found everything, didn't he? All 7 hiding places. Most of them, yeah. But here's the thing. He didn't take the treasure. He left it hidden, like Thomas Sullivan intended. He said it was like being the guardian of a piece of history. So why is my family so desperate to get it now? Derek's expression becomes even more serious. Because they're not the only ones who know about it. There are other people, Marcus. People who have been looking for Thomas Sullivan's treasure for decades, and they're running out of patience. What kind of people? The kind you don't want to mess with. The kind who break into houses and follow people around in dark sedans. I lean back in the booth, processing what Derek is telling me. How do you know all this? Because Frank got in over his head about 6 months ago. He made a deal with some people, told them he could get access to the house, that he could find the treasure. But then Grandpa Joe got suspicious and started changing his will, and Frank realized he might not be able to deliver on his promise. What kind of deal? He borrowed money from them, a lot of money. He told them he had collateral in the form of hidden treasure, and they believed him. But now they want their money back, or they want the treasure, and they're not going to wait much longer. I feel a chill run down my spine. Derek, are you telling me that Frank owes money to criminals? I'm telling you that Frank is an idiot who thought he could outsmart people who don't play by normal rules. And now they're pressuring him to deliver, which means they're pressuring all of us. Is that why you offered me $100,000 for the house? Derek nods. We figured if we could get you to sign over your claim, we could tear the house apart looking for the treasure, pay off Frank's debt, and still have some left over. But I didn't sign over my claim. No, you didn't. And now these people are getting impatient. They know you inherited the house, and they know you've been spending time there. They probably think you're searching for the treasure yourself, which of course I am. Derek, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Have you told anyone else about this conversation? No, he says immediately. Mom and Frank don't even know I'm here. They think I'm trying to convince you to take the money and walk away. And what do you think I should do? Derek is quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I think you should take the money and run. Go somewhere far away until this whole thing blows over. These people, they're not going to stop looking. But the treasure belongs to me now. Grandpa Joe left it to me. Marcus, there's enough treasure in that house to pay off Frank's debt and still leave you with more money than you'd make in 10 years. But if you try to fight for it, you might end up dead. I stare at him across the table. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to save your life, Derek says. These people have been looking for Thomas Sullivan's treasure for 90 years. They're not going to let some graphic designer from Portland waltz in and take it away from them. Oh, who are they? What's their connection to Thomas Sullivan? Derek shakes his head. I don't know all the details. Frank never told me the whole story. All I know is that they've been tracking the treasure through different owners of the house, and they've been waiting for the right opportunity to get it. And Frank gave them that opportunity. Frank gave them hope that they could finally get it. But now that hope is turning into desperation, and desperate people do desperate things. I think about the backpack in my hotel room, full of gold coins and rare stamps and historical documents. I think about the 2 hiding places I haven't found yet, and about the people who broke into the house earlier today. Derek, I need to know something else. Did Frank or your mom ever actually see the treasure? Do they know how much is really there? They found some of it over the years. Maybe a few $1,000s worth of gold coins, some old jewelry. But they always suspected there was more, much more. How much more? They think the total could be worth over $1 million, maybe more, depending on the current value of gold and rare stamps. I don't tell him that their estimate is probably conservative. Based on what I've found so far, the total value could be closer to $2 million, maybe more. Derek, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find out who these people are, what their real connection to Thomas Sullivan is, and exactly how much Frank owes them. Marcus, I'm not going to run away, I interrupt. This treasure was left to me by my grandfather, who protected it for 50 years. If some criminals think they can intimidate me into giving it up, they're wrong. Derek looks at me like I've lost my mind. Marcus, you're talking about going up against people who have been planning this for decades, people who have killed for less. Have they killed anyone? I don't know. But Frank is terrified of them, and Frank isn't afraid of anyone. I stand up and throw some money on the table. Find out what you can. Call me tomorrow. Marcus, wait. Derek, whose side are you really on? He looks at me for a long moment. I'm on your side. I know you don't believe me, but I'm trying to protect you. Grandpa Joe would have wanted me to protect you. Then help me find out who these people are and what they really want. As I drive back to the hotel, I think about what Derek told me. Frank borrowed money from criminals, using the promise of hidden treasure as collateral. Now those criminals are getting impatient, and they're willing to break into houses and follow people around to get what they think is theirs. But the treasure isn't theirs. It belongs to Thomas Sullivan's legacy, and now it belongs to me. Grandpa Joe protected it for 50 years, and now it's my turn to protect it. Back in my hotel room, I call the one person I know who might be able to help me understand what I'm dealing with. My friend Jake, the one who lent me the tools, used to be a police officer before he went into construction. If anyone can help me figure out how to handle criminals who think they can intimidate me, it's him. Jake, I say when he answers the phone. I need your help, and I need you to promise me that what I'm about to tell you stays between us. Marcus, you're scaring me. What's going on? I found something in my grandfather's house, something valuable, and there are people who want to take it away from me. What kind of people? The kind who break into houses and follow people around in dark sedans. There's a pause. Marcus, are you in danger? I think so. And I need to know what to do about it. The first thing you do is call the police. I already did that, but I need more than just police protection. I need to understand who these people are and what they're really after. Jake is quiet for a moment. Can you meet me tomorrow? I want to see this thing you found, and I want to help you figure out how to handle this situation safely. Jake, I can't drag you into this. Marcus, you're my friend. And if someone is threatening you, then they're dealing with both of us. Where do you want to meet? I think about it for a moment. The house is obviously not safe, and I don't want to meet anywhere public where we might be overheard. Do you remember that old warehouse district where you used to work on construction projects? The one with the abandoned buildings? Yeah, I know the place. Building 47, the one with the loading dock. Tomorrow at noon. I'll be there. After I hang up, I spread Thomas Sullivan's map out on the bed one more time. 2 more hiding places, 2 more pieces of the puzzle. And somewhere out there, people who have been waiting 90 years to get their hands on what I've already found. But I'm not giving up. This treasure is my inheritance, my legacy, and my responsibility. Grandpa Joe trusted me to understand its true value, and I'm not going to let him down. Tomorrow, I'm going to find out exactly what I'm dealing with, and then I'm going to figure out how to protect what's mine. The story ends with Marcus having discovered most of the treasure, but facing a dangerous situation with criminals who have been tracking it for decades. He has the support of his friend Jake and his cousin Derek, but he's also learned that his own family has been complicit in putting him in danger. The final challenge isn't just finding the remaining treasure, but protecting it and himself from people who have been waiting nearly a century to claim it. The true value of the inheritance isn't just the monetary worth of the gold and artifacts, but the responsibility of protecting a piece of history and honoring his grandfather's trust. Marcus has proven he understands this deeper value, but now he must prove he can protect it.